Hey, it's Dr. Amanda with StraightSmile Solutions, StraightSmileSolutions.com, and a lot of you are kind of getting in the weeds, getting confused on how to order your molar tubes. Now let's take a step back. Why would you be ordering molar tubes? Well, you probably wouldn't be if you're using indirect bonding because those are actually included. So only reason you'd be ordering molar tubes if you've kind of, and I never recommend that people start with just direct bonding. So if you kind of graduated from indirect bonding to direct bonding and you're deciding to freehand it, so that's why you'd be ordering molar tubes. So in general, everything comes in sets, so you can order from any major orthodontic company, your TP Ortho, your Ormco, your Henry Schein, etc., etc. And they have basic stuff in sets, and just get the ones that come in the set, basically. But sometimes there's variations you have to pick from, and it can get confusing. But I would just recommend asking the rep just to pick the most simple one. And I have different videos on prescriptions, the actual prescriptions. So the two most common prescriptions, just at a really high level, are going to be your Roth or your MBT, letter M as in Mary, B as in boy, T as in Tom. So they're just people's names, basically, that, a little bitty tweak, like a little more torque on this tooth. And it's stuff that's so subtle that you are not going to even notice the difference. You're really not. The general dentist is not, and the patient is not. Orthodontist might, but I wouldn't even worry about it. As long as you do Roth or MBT, you should be good. I can't even tell the difference between the two of those. And also, the other thing you have to pick is an 022 or 018 slot. I usually recommend that all general dentists pick 022 because there's a little more forgiving, a little easier to get used to, not quite as hard. So I personally prefer 018, but that's just me. But I started off on 022 and then I kind of graduated to 018. So in any case, if you get in the weeds, like I said, just ask the rep to pick the most standard thing. But just to kind of go over what some of this stuff is and why you probably don't even need it, they're trying to get you to buy more stuff, right? So obviously, molar tubes that go on 6-year-old molars are slightly bigger than molar tubes that go on 7-year-old molars, 12-year-old molars, the sevens. And you don't even usually need to band or bond second molars. It's usually more of a one-off, maybe towards the end, definitely not at the beginning usually. So I wouldn't buy too much of those because you may rarely use them. And you may be doing pretty simple cases, so you probably won't need them for your simple cases. What else? So now they've got single, double, and triple. So for you guys, for the most part, for brackets, I think just get singles. So, they're just asking how many holes are in there. So for example, if you look at this one has a slot here, or tube here. There's also another tube here. This one's square or rectangle, and this one is round. So this auxiliary headgear tube is for headgear. Well, none of you guys should be using, this is like not face mask headgear, but like headgear, like from the 60s, 70s, and 50s that goes around the neck and the head. I don't use that at all. Why would I want to restrict the maxilla? If I have that problem, then I should be advancing the mandible, right? Duh. For airway, it makes 0 sense. So no, I definitely did a lot of those before, but then once I started learning more about airway, I'm like, no, we're not doing that anymore. The only other time I use a headgear tube is I can use it for lip bumpers, but I wouldn't do it on a bracket anyways. I do it on bands. So yeah, so you only need single tube. So no double, no triple. Low profile, yeah, I mean, that's a no-brainer. I mean, if you have a choice of low profile or high profile, why would you get high profile? It's just going to be more uncomfortable. So low profile, it's just a marketing gimmick. Convertible, no, it's not like a Mustang or a car. A convertible just means that this part of the tube you got here, you can peel it back with this little can opener thing. It just like basically has the ability to be converted from a 4-sided thing to a 3-sided thing. Don't worry, you're not going to do that. You're definitely not doing that. We're getting really complicated. So all this funky stuff is, when I was trained by Burstone Mechanics, which is all these funky, I mean, it's really cool what they taught us, how to move things, but it was the most inefficient way of moving things. So, but you learned all about the forces, right? So it's like basic physics bent into wires and cantilevers and auxiliaries and stuff like that. But we used a lot of these convertible tubes, triples, and things like that. So, and you guys are just going to be using singles. You're definitely not using triples. That's absolutely ridiculous. So, but we would run, let's say we didn't have a HeadGear tube. Let's say we had a double, or if we had a triple, it'd be a HeadGear tube, a slot and a slot below it. But we would run the auxiliary cantilever to like upright a second molar or an impacted canine or something like that off the auxiliary tube, or the triple tube or the double tube. So anyways, that's TMI. You don't need to know that. But that's so you only things you need to know right now. Let's recap. Single. Low profile is fine. Definitely never ever need double, triple convertible. Okay. The buckle groove is not a huge deal. It's just this little thing. You can see the difference between like this bracket, which is all like flat, and then this one has like a little divot here. It's nice because you can take the Explorer or the Scaler and press to get it seated. Because sometimes when you try to press these, it like flips over. So yeah, if you can get buckle groove, that's a good thing, I would say. That's kind of a new thing. Pad size is a big deal. I mean, obviously you want a pretty as big pad size as possible, because the bigger the pad, the less likely it's going to break. Obviously the back of the pad should already have the mesh and stuff like that. So pad size is important. Sometimes they'll have ones that are bigger pad sizes and smaller pad sizes, but pick the big ones. The only time pad size isn't good is, let's say, for example, you have an impacted second molar that's barely exposed and you're like, oh my god, I don't have like almost no tooth structure. Well, then you'd want a small pad size, but again, that would probably be on a 12-year-old molar. Again, oh, bumpers. Yeah, we talked about bumpers. Extension, that's just where it's kind of like pad size, where it's like the size of this and maybe it's still just a little bit longer, so you have a little more surface to bond to. HeadGear chills, we talked about that. And then some of them have a vertical slot. That doesn't even make sense to me. So I guess if you're doing tip edge, you need a vertical slot. I don't know. So again, recap. Do 022, Roth or MBT, single molar tubes, low profile. That's all you need to know. Oh, and of course, hooks. Most importantly, you must have a hook. These all have hooks. Hooks, 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 hooks. Absolutely have a hook, because you're going to need to put power chain on, odds are. So, and it's really hard to tie a Kobe to a molar bracket. Sometimes the hooks break off, and then that's kind of a hassle when they do. Or they can get all gunked up with calculus or something. But all right, hopefully this is helpful. Don't stress out in selecting your brackets. All right, bye.